Welcome, everyone. I'm Shah, and today we're going to talk about how data professionals can become data freelancers. Joining me for this discussion is Dimitri, who is a independent data consultant, and he's also the founder of the Data Freelancer. So we're going to cover all the top questions that I hear from aspiring freelancers, and then we'll do a live Q&A at the end. So thank you so much for joining me, Dimitri.
Thanks for having me.
So let's go back to the very beginning when you started this journey. A lot of people, the first question they ask me is, how do you get your first freelance client? So I'm going to ask you that question. How was that experience for you? How did you get that first client?
I actually just checked for the call, and my very first client was a client on Upwork. It was a $25 project on manipulating someone's Excel spreadsheet. So that was my very, very first client.
So were they like a business, or was this just like someone trying to do their taxes or something?
Yeah, that was just again just a private person needing someone that's better in data. But then again, the second project was basically a data science, more data science oriented project, and it was with a business, and that's how slowly things started off. For most people, I think, who don't have the network, who start from scratch like I did, Upwork in that case was a good source because it was the place where already clients are, and I didn't know where I could get them elsewhere.
And did you have these skills? I guess everyone kind of knows Excel, but doing the data science skills, were these things that you were learning on the fly, or you had already had professional positions using this skill set?
Prior to becoming a freelancer and basically quitting my last employment relationship, I worked for 6 years. I worked for 4 different companies, on average 1.5 years with each company. Then I pulled the plug and I said I want to become a freelancer. So I already worked most of the time under the data analyst and a bit under the data scientist job title. So I knew tools like Excel, different dashboard tools from Tableau, Power BI, Sisense, different tools basically in the market, but the principles of BI tools always the same. Also did some data science projects.
So you'd been working as an analyst and a data scientist, and then
Yeah,
after 4 years of doing that is when you made the transition. So I guess looking back, you've done a lot these past 5, 6 years. If you were to start over today with everything that you've learned, how would you go from 0 to 1? How would you get that very first client if you had to do it over again?
it's always important. We don't all start from the same place. But I'm just going to speak to those who were similar to me. Basically, you have some job experience, you know some skills, don't have a big professional network that you can really rely on. I also didn't have the opportunity to basically make my former employers my first freelance clients, which is often recommended. It's an easy way to basically propose them. So if that works for you, try that route. Else, if you really start from scratch with nothing else, I would do something that I've done 6 years ago, and that's basically start on Upwork. Some people hate Upwork just because they always say low rates, lots of competition, and so on and so forth. But those are all invalid arguments, and I'm happy to go against them. But the main point is often companies who hire freelancers, they also don't know who to reach out first. So they know that Upwork is a platform where they can meet a freelancer. So that's why it's always a neutral territory in that sense that you can go there, find a client, they can go there, find a freelancer. And that's why I think it's a good way to start. That's one route I would go. And the second route I would also do in parallel is contracting, especially at the very beginning. You are low in confidence. You don't know if freelancing works for you or if you can make it happen, and you kind of also need income, especially if you want to go full time like I did. In that sense, contracting is basically where you are the freelancer, there's the end client who's looking for a freelancer, and there's a middleman. Usually it's a recruiting company, and they try to place you as a contractor. So you have a contract with a middleman, the middleman has a contract with the end client, but at the end you really work for the end client. That's usually pretty good because those types of clients who work with a middleman, they have a lot of money. And they don't want you to work on a short gig for a few hours or a few days. Usually they want to hire you for 3, 6, 9, 12, whatever, or even 2 years of time sometimes as a freelancer, and often close to almost, let's say, like a full-time job, with the only distinction is that you are a freelancer. Yeah, if you can get one of those projects, that's what I've also done when I started out, got one of those clients. It gives you in a lot of income usually. It's basically allows you to breathe, lay back, and kind of say, hey, freelancing seems to be working as long as I have this big paying client. But then you can start doing, again, play with your Upwork on the side. You're much more relaxed, and you don't basically act on the position of, oh, I'm stressed, I have to find something, I have to sell myself under, uh, for very low amount and something like this. So you actually act from a much better position once you have such a client. So that's why I mainly recommend to new starters who don't have the network, you don't have any clients, go on Upwork, try to get clients there, get experience also there, and also go try to get a contracting client.
Yeah, I like this two strategy approach, like two-prong approach. You do Upwork, but you also look at these recruiting companies, which is like super interesting. And then the value of the recruiting company is that it's a shorter gap to overcome than getting your first client on Upwork because the demand's already there. The recruiting company's already done the work of acquiring the customer. They're just looking for talent, and if you're leaving a full-time job, you have the talent, and it typically pays a little better than a full-time job because it is a contract role. And then that can be a stable baseline, a stable foundation for your income as you do the experimentation and learn the ropes of Upwork and trying to sell yourself directly to clients. Another thing people ask me all the time when they're trying to break into freelance, it's like, okay, I'll go on Upwork, but like, what do I sell? Like what services do I provide? So I don't know, like what advice do you have for people who are trying to figure that part out as well?
Well, the good thing is when you go on Upwork, you don't have to think about what you should sell. You basically scout for the projects and you try to match them with your skill and think like, can I solve this problem for that person? It's much easier that way because the client is already there screaming in your face, I'm looking for a freelancer. The hard part of course on Upwork is to get the project, but what should I sell? That's already basically answered. And the same for if you do contracting. It's a very clear defined project is either a fit for you or not. And again, it's not everything is black and white. If you think there's a fit for 80%, I mean the other 20%, if they're not as critical, you probably can acquire them on the job. I mean, a full-time employee would do the same.
That's another benefit of doing this Upwork path slash recruiting firm path is that this is like a really major, like a big part of running a consulting business. If you're doing it, in a vacuum, like without these platforms, is not just getting the customers, but figuring out what to sell them. And doing the recruiting company and doing Upwork makes that much easier because you can just go on Upwork or you can just see what the businesses are asking for. Do you still primarily get your clients through Upwork or how do you do acquisition now?
Personally, I never relied on Upwork that much. I think on average, every year from my I don't know my whole income, I think only 5% is Upwork, so it's a very small share. I'm still grateful for Upwork because Upwork, when I say 5%, those are the tracked 5% that I extract from Upwork. But Upwork is a very good lead generator. I hope people don't hear me from Upwork, but sometimes it happens that clients approach me the other way around, and then you still get to work with them. So it's a very good lead generator in that sense. But how do I also approach it? The beginning is always the hardest part, not because you have to get clients. You have to get clients when you start out. After 5 years, after 10 years, getting clients is always the challenge, and you will not lose that. But I think it's the confidence that you gain over time that makes things easier. Because if I now lose all my clients, I know how to get them, or I have the confidence that I will get them. And I know that sometimes patience is important. Whereas people who just start out, they again they say Upwork doesn't work. I tried I don't know 10 proposals and it doesn't work. It just simply didn't work. I just checked. I started to freelance on the 1st of November, and my first Upwork project, the one I mentioned before, the $25, I got it on the 21st of November, meaning it took me 3 weeks to get a first client. Meaning I remember I was there trying to apply and I applied to everything. I tried different things. I tried to really study the platform because I had nothing else to do. That was the whole day, 8 hours, just figuring out either talking to recruiters to get the first project or on Upwork. I tried out a lot of different things. I think it's the patience that's also part of it.
Well, it took you 21 days to make $25, so I think maybe that's a good like to set people's expectations. Okay, so one thing I was curious about is, since Upwork it was such a small percent of your revenue, how were you selling yourself or like defining your services? Because if clients are reaching out to you or you're reaching out to clients, like what are you pitching them with? Like what is it that you're offering them?
Again, when I started, I came from the background of working always in data connected to marketing. So I was always familiar with all the, say, interesting projects or work projects that are more valuable for marketeers. When I started out, I was really looking for those types of projects, especially, I don't know, getting some dashboards, to monitor your marketing campaigns, doing some clustering analysis on your customers, so on and so on. So I was always looking for these types of projects because I know I can bring value. I also had basically the benefit of saying, look, I have X amount of experience in this field. So these were the types of projects I was basically looking for. And I know that I can speak with clients using the same language because, again, I've always worked with marketeers before. So that was the first thing. And I was basically, as I mentioned before, someone was shouting for someone who could build this, and I was just trying to match that piece of puzzle that they wanted me to be. So that was the easy part. Those projects are fun and nice, but again, they also only pay you that much because there's so much more competition out there. So now, for example, over time, I switched a little bit the way I what I offer. So I went away from just going on Upwork and applying to projects. Once you get a little bit more success on Upwork or general also through other channels, then clients start coming to you and they start coming to you with, hey, we need someone that looks like that basically looks like you, but we still don't know exactly what we need. And that's where you come more as the consultant on board, where you tell them, hey, let's scope the project, and that's a project of itself. So now before you start pitching what you can do for them, let's do the first project, which is basically the scoping project, and then the implementation project. And that was basically the next iteration. To now, 6 years forward, now I focus much more on a subscription model. And here I still use Upwork because it's really easy and good to identify e-commerce businesses who are my target in this sense, because they put out projects and sometimes they have the URL in the project. So now I'm experimenting much more with direct outreach, sending them emails, trying different approaches. Basically, what I'm trying to pitch is always the main value that I can provide. And this is not a list this is not just a link to a portfolio of some dashboards or analysis that I've run in my life, but it's just basically almost a one-liner of what I could be for you and how I can help your business. And if that one-liner really hits the spot, then usually I get a feedback or I get like an email back, and which basically says, let's have a talk. And that's the thing. And then once you're in a conversation, everything is different.
Yeah. Okay. So primarily you were getting inbound. So maybe from your Upwork profile, were
Yeah.
people reaching out to you on other channels, or was it just on Upwork?
Reaching out to me mainly on Upwork. I had a few people reaching out on LinkedIn, but again, I never had this really good strong LinkedIn game addressing my audience, because even in the past,
Right.
when I was focusing much more on marketing data projects, it was still too broad, the message that I would
Oh,
go
okay.
out there. So that's why I never played along that much. Right now, I'm start switching things, and I want to go much more into the e-commerce aspect of it, because I figured out that my positioning around that field is much more tighter now. So it
Yeah.
might make much more sense to now put more emphasis on this on channels like Upwork, where you know exactly, like LinkedIn. Most of the time, as a freelancer, I got either inbound through Upwork, or it was me directly applying on
Got it.
projects through recruiters, through Upwork, and then slowly, once I got the first clients, then you basically build that network that you always wanted to
Okay.
have. That's so valuable, and that network now helps you to keep working with the same client, repeating projects, asking the client for referrals, and now that's basically where I think every freelancer wants to go. because that's the juicy part, when people start talking about you, they know who you are, you help them, they have some other
Yeah.
friend who runs a company or works in another company that can introduce you, and that's
Right.
basically the main value.
There are like these two key components when it comes to like selling services. One is like the need, the demand, which you're assessing out through Upwork, and then the other one is your skill set. And so your skills were primarily from like you're working in marketing in a marketing function, and you're doing analytics and data science. So that was your starting point. It's like, okay, I have this experience, I have these skills. Let me just look for these kinds of roles, and then that's how you got started on Upwork. And also, it allowed you to make a more compelling pitch because you can just say, "Hey, look at all these things that I've built, and look at all my experience." So it kind of gives you that authority when you're applying to these roles. And so you started on Upwork, and that gave you like a really good foundation. But you realized that the marketing analytics was still a little broad. So now you're kind of going toward the niching into e-commerce specifically. So I'm curious about niching. This is something that people will talk about a lot and maybe argue about and whatnot. I've seen successful freelancers do it both ways. People making $200,000 a year more without a niche, and people going super niche and saying like this is like the only way. So like, how do you think about it? Do you think niching is necessary?
It's not necessary, but it's definitely, let's say, a component of success. Those freelancers who are successful often and say they are still, let's say, a generalist. I still doubt that, and often when I look at those profiles, I still see that there's some sort of niche that they trigger. Maybe they're just not aware of it, and a niche might not just be me being the e-commerce guy, but it could be me also focusing. A niche could focus on a technology, for example. I'm the Tableau ninja or whatever it is, or I'm the again, it could be someone with in the automotive industry or in the fashion industry, or again, companies who use Shopify as a e-commerce platform. That could be my niche. So a tool or an industry, or you can have different, basically. Combinations of the two to make your niche. So often I see those. It's very hard that someone says I'm just a data analyst. I would say it's very general. Again, the niche helps you really to trigger the point. The better your niche position is, the easier a client will identify if that's what they need or not.
So it really
So yeah.
helps from that sales perspective. It just makes it a much punchier, impactful
Yeah.
message when you're reaching out to clients. So you were talking a little bit earlier about like what your sales pipeline looks
Mhm.
like, and so I feel like this is another thing I didn't fully appreciate even when I first started on Upwork, because I was applying to roles. And Upwork is very much like applying to full-time jobs. It's like, okay, I have these skills or I have these roles I want to kind of go after, and I see what the postings are and see if it's a good fit, and then I apply to it. And it's a similar kind of thing on Upwork. But then once I started doing freelance more and trying to do independent consulting, then this notion of like a sales pipeline came up of like discovery calls and doing the like a discovery project, like an initial project to scope it out, and then doing like like the full project and things like that. So I'm curious, like in your context for doing the marketing analytics, what does typical sales pipeline look like from the initial lead or the initial contact all the way to like signing the first contract? And then after you do the contract, like do you have like an initial project that's like relatively small to that's basically leading up to a larger project or something like that? So I'm just curious, like what that looked like for you.
It always depends on the situation, because usually as a freelancer, we're not a big machine. And if I'm busy on client work, usually that pipeline looks pretty boring because I'm not doing much anything because I'm actually busy making money on on client projects. If I'm not that busy, then of course the pipeline looks different, because then I start to activate on the one side maybe the recruiters, sending out emails, maybe going on calls to see if there's a fit for a specific position they have. If they think I'm interested in, then they introduce me to the client, and there might be another round of interview, and then there's usually the decision. So usually that route doesn't take a lot of time of yourself. Then if you go on Upwork, for example, it's the same thing. Are you on Upwork because you are actively applying for projects, then you have to wait until the client gets back. You have to talk to them. So there's no, I would say, 100% defined pipeline, at least not for me. Because again, right now I don't have the storefront. I don't have a website that says Dimitri does XYZ. So it's not like people come and run at my and knock at my door and say like, hey, we want to buy this from you, because I'm basically invisible, as most freelancers are. So now the pipeline looks much more different. Once you got the first project, I do have my email list and of clients that I've worked with in the past, and I always put like a last date when I last sent them a last message or something, so I can always quickly filter who is the person I haven't talked to in a while and who would I like to work again. And I just now on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, I just take my Excel spreadsheet, open it up, send out some emails, see if there are any companies that I've used to work with, if they want to work with me again, or if I have a new project or I've implemented something with a client and I know another client that might benefit from it, I'm going to propose it to them, see if they want to jump with me on a call. But usually that pipeline is always, let's say, if I want to engage with a client, it doesn't matter if it's through the contracting, through Upwork or whatever, that it always looks the same. There's this first initial spark, could either be from their side or from my side. There's the moment where you do that short discovery meeting, which can usually between 15 to 30 minutes, where you really try to assess what are they after, how much do they know already what they need, how much do you fit in that picture, and then it's basically the decision of do I want to make them an offer to work together, which could be the scoping project or directly a work engagement, whatever it is. Usually when I do that first discovery call with them, and I already have the notion that this is going to be an interesting client or project, I already booked a follow-up call usually within a day or two after, because I tell them I just need time to prepare for it. And once I have done that, I go on the call, I pitch them the project, I pitch them the price, the timeline, and everything around that. The client either says, good, let's do it, or they say, let me check with my team, or some other, let's say, excuse not to basically say yes in that moment. And I just tell them like, yeah, let's put a timeline to it. And then once the timeline is over, I need a decision from your side. And that's usually the moment where either they reach out back to me and say yes or no. If it's a no, we try to figure out what was the problem. And if they don't reach back to me, that's the moment where I just send one more follow-up. If not, I just continue my way. But usually the pipeline of doing the sales pipeline is very short. I mean, it's not like
Right.
many things. I mean, it's simple. If you want to work with a freelancer, you definitely need help with something, And if I'm the right person, let's start working on it. If I have the capacity.
That's super interesting, and I'm glad you brought up the referrals because I feel like that's something I didn't hit on enough, but it seems like it's a big part of your acquisition strategy. So you have like Upwork as like a big part of the lead source, but you have this massive client list, or you have your client list, and you just have this map in your brain of like who worked on what, when you last talked to them, and you're just like keeping those past clients warm, so you can reach out to them for like follow-up work, or maybe you want looking for referrals or something like that. But then that pipeline was super valuable, like how you're explaining it. So you do the initial spark, as you're saying. So whether that's like a new lead or an exist or a previous client, then the next step is the discovery call. So there you're just trying to see, is like, okay, is this going to be a real thing? Do they know what they want? Is there an opportunity for me to provide value here? And then what you're trying to do from that meeting is you're going to get another meeting. So after the call's over, you'll send a follow-up, try to schedule the next one. And then that next meeting is more of a sales meeting. So the first one is discovery, the second one is
Yeah.
sales. And that one you're trying to get a commitment out of them, whether that's a yes or no, let's work together, or a commitment of, they're going to give you an answer by this specific date. And then that's basically the end of the pipeline.
Correct. Again, it's not all in my head what you mentioned before. I do again in my Excel spreadsheet every time I talk to
Right. Okay.
a client or a potential client. Even if people reach out to me on LinkedIn, even if they are small fish, big fish, it doesn't matter. I automatically open up my Excel spreadsheet. I put in their
Mm.
name. I quickly do like a quick. I put like the company they work for. I search them on LinkedIn, because sometimes talk to someone, and then maybe a year later or 2 year, they switch company. So that's why I also like to have
Yeah. Okay.
I put their email in there. I put quickly what types of company they're working on. I mentioned I have like a column for like the problem they basically want to address with me, and I mentioned the type of technology in case they mention it. And again, and then there's just the last column for last contact, and that's just usually while I fill it out, I already put the date of today. If 1 week later I send them another email, I quickly go back there, I just update it. It's once you get used to it, it's really low effort, but that little Excel grows over time. And sometimes I had people, that just reached out to me and asked me for something they needed a data engineer, and I'm not a data engineer, but I understood about the business, I understood about their needs. So still following up with them sometimes at the end led to a project. And yeah, so that's how
Okay.
things go. Just yeah, have a place to store them, because this will be what I call the network, having like
Right.
and it's not just connecting people on LinkedIn, not knowing who they are. No, you really had a touch point with them. You know that there's an interest. You know that there's interest to work with a freelancer. So they're not cold leads. They're already warmed up a
Right.
little bit.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. No, I love that. You have this Excel CRM and you got things like their name, the company, the LinkedIn, some notes, and the last contact date. Were there any other columns that I missed? I think I listed five right there.
no, you mentioned it has 5 6
Just super
columns. It's
simple Excel
super simple.
spreadsheet.
Yeah,
Okay, awesome. So we're getting a ton of questions in the chat. So maybe we can transition over a little early
sure.
to Q&A, and then we can come back to my
Yeah.
questions at the end, but we'll prioritize the audience questions. So Dimple from LinkedIn asked, how to reach out to clients apart from cold emailing and Upwork?
First of all, you can't really reach out to clients on Upwork because, again, they are kind of anonymous unless they publish that there's a project and you apply to the project. But there's not, let's say, the direct approach. Cold email, again, is a direct way of contacting them. You could also contact them through Upwork, I assume, or any other channel. But really, I mean, how do people get a direct hold of you? And I think the direct hold is usually you have their phone number, you have their email, you have their, I don't know, you message through LinkedIn, any other social app. But I think in the business context, usually email is the tool. But I would not, just to throw this in there as well, I think cold outreach only makes sense if you really have a good offer. If you start out and you're that generalist, you, there's no real offer. You're just someone with some skills, and you basically, if you just message someone, and I get them a lot, it's people telling me, "Hey Dimitri, I see you have the website, the data freelancer.com. If you need anyone to help you, I don't know, build the website or improve the website, then
Like people with SEO help,
yes,
copywriters, like
correctly,
that kind of stuff.
correctly. They come up with a list, a listicle of things they could help you with, and they just basically say, "Hey, if you need any help with anything, just contact me." And that's the same thing of saying like, "Hey, I'm a data analyst or I'm a data engineer with those skills, and if you need my help, reach out to me." People will not respond to that because again, it's the part of niching down. And if you have a strong niche, you have a strong position, you fit into a right pain point basically. And if you know about that, then I think it makes sense to use cold calling or sorry, cold email as a good outreach method. Otherwise, I don't think it makes sense.
Yeah, I like that. So when you have that, oh, there's the puppy.
Yeah, but
Cute
she
one.
went crazy.
That's funny. She got all excited about cold outreach.
Yeah,
So when you have that like really specific, strong offers, like that very specific offer helps you cut through the noise because you got to imagine people's inboxes is a disaster.
yeah.
So it really has to cut through and be very specific on the pain point. And I guess also you got to do massive volume. It's not just like 100; it's probably in the thousands for a cold outreach to work well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just, for example, I just started now since this year because I have this new basically business model, this new offer that I want to basically promote, and I don't buy lists or I don't try to scrape the list. Right now, the way I do it, I really focus on small e-commerce companies that work with 2 or 3 different technologies. So I sometimes take an hour and I just go Google, try to find the website, see if it fits. Then I figure out who's the basically one of the founders, because my companies that I try to address are very small. They are founder-led. So then I find the founder maybe on LinkedIn. Maybe I do some more search. Then you maybe get the email, and then I send them a very personalized email, and I do that on a very low scale. And again, out of maybe 20 emails that I send out, I get one back, and that's for me already um, super successful. Let's say
Oh,
it's like a
okay.
5%.
No,
And I
that's
think
really good.
for people in marketing, but again, it's not a scalable solution. If you
Right.
have a really tight offer, a really good offer, I think it makes sense to go that volume route and play the numbers. But if you start out, you want to learn about, you want to get that feedback, you have to put really some time into that. Yeah, cold outreach. That's why I don't usually recommend it for people who start out.
Right.
Go the shortest route. Go where there are clients, and clients are there where the recruiters are. Go there where Upwork is, or anything, or directly talk to your network if you know someone.
Hmm.
That is the shortest route. Don't try to now do that whole big marketing thing, because it comes over time once you know exactly what you want to offer.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you're doing a lot of work with the outreach. Like it's a lot of understanding who the specific avatar you're trying to reach is, like
Yeah.
having that understanding, and then you're kind of meticulously finding them and reaching out to them. So I feel like that kind of segues nicely to you talking about your e-commerce focus right now. So this question is, can you explain a little more about your niche in e-commerce?
It all came, just for context. I About a year and a half, I became a father, and before that, my freelancing projects were, again, I was working lots of hours. Every project that I could get, I was basically saying yes to. So that was a lot of volume, basically, on my side. But that doesn't work once you become basically a parent and you want to spend more time with your family. And now I basically push a lot the business model of a subscription business. So now the clients I want to work with, I want to work with them on a long-term basis. That's why I basically do subscription model on either 4 month or 6 month installments, basically. And I really focus on the niche of e-commerce that either work with Shopify or Shopware, or just are, let's say, small micro e-commerce businesses that just use Stripe, for example. And why those? Because usually they are very small. They are, let's say, usually 5 to 20 people. They are cash flow rich. They spend a lot of money in marketing, because if they don't feed the top funnel, they simply don't sell. That's why they have this cash flow. And again, they are busy with selling their product, with marketing their product, and they have little knowledge of what damage or what cool things you can do with data. And they are willing to experiment, to bet, let's get someone on the data side that can help us, that can lead us. And that's basically what I focus on, because I know exactly what often people tell me. But on the subscription model, Dimitri, people will bombard you with tasks. And because we often see the subscription model or I think the first time where I saw it is also with graphic designers that basically sell their services. But graphic designers are companies that work with graphic designers. It's a service that you always need. It's like, oh, I need a design now for my new campaign. I need a new logo design for the company. I need a new design for the email or for some promotional stuff. So there's always design needs. Data is a bit different, because you only build X amount of data pipelines. You only build X amount of data models or dashboards or whatever it is. So selling data under the subscription model doesn't make sense if you think about volume. And I don't think about volume with my clients. I really think about more hand holding. So whatever data work I do, they don't know what I'm really doing. So it's really about um, me being basically the advisor for them and helping them to push certain actions. If I tell them, hey, I see certain things, you sell product A and product B, they sell very well together. Let's identify users or customers that only purchase product A, and now let's do a marketing campaign and push product B and test the uplift. let's do this, you know. So now I told them, now they have to go out, they have to do the homework, they have to do everything. It takes sometimes time, 2, 3, 4 weeks, and you don't hear from the client. So that's why it's really easy to manage them, because it's not me doing a whole lot of different things. It's more being the data person and then helping them to analyze the results, coming to a conclusion, doing different tests. And if you do that the right way, um, for them, again, they start in their data maturity from zero, you know. So whatever you do, you add so much wow and so much knowledge to them that they enjoy. That's why on a subscription basis it makes sense. And again, e-commerce first, because I have a passion for e-commerce, and again, because I know that those tools also from previous work experiences with clients. Once I focus on these 2, 3 tools, the code that I have set up, I can really quickly build really nice dashboards, pull all the data together. I can reproduce it over different clients. So there's this little scalability thing in there as well. So I don't know. Any other questions on that? I just talked a
No,
lot.
that's awesome. So I like when you're talking the kind of the three things I think about with business. I mentioned two of them earlier, which is the need is the first thing. I mean, you need the need, you need the demand. The next thing is like the skill, so like the ability to um, fulfill that need. But then the third thing is interest. Like you need to be interested in the thing, and it seems like with this new e-commerce niche, you've kind of found that synergy between the three because you have the interest in e-commerce, but you also have the skills, and it seems like you found a really strong avatar, like small-sized e-commerce stores using Shopify, Shopware, or something else.
Again, how do I also find them? Not just by searching on Google, but again, it's super easy to go, for example, on Upwork and just type in the search box Shopify and dashboard, Shopify and data, something like this. And you just scroll and you really quickly find them. Most projects, they don't tell you who the client is. I try to apply for on a project where they look for someone else, not a data person, and still pitch. That hasn't worked that far that good, because probably it's not a match for what they're looking for right now. But sometimes they do mention the company, like the business domain, the URL. So then you can navigate to the website, do the whole research that I mentioned before. So it's really good research tool as well.
And so it sounds like the niche just makes your life a lot easier when
Yeah,
it comes to finding customers.
yeah.
Okay, so we got another one. Thank you for the podcast. My question is, which type of skills do developers need to get a job easily? As you know, AI, ML have over 100 subjects. If I want to reduce and focus, which should I pursue? So I guess
I
he's trying to like narrow down, like, what skills should I focus on developing if I want to go into freelance?
I wish I could give you the answer. It's super hard, just because I don't know. Just because I'm a freelancer, it doesn't mean that I scout all the freelancing projects out there and I memorize them and I have a really good feeling about that. Um, but that's why I'm really into my niche, my zone, everything that's not, let's say, hitting that area. I just have it like I don't focus on it. What I can say is, due to my project with the data freelancer, I do crawl lots of data freelancing projects and I do have some statistics around them. I wouldn't say just a growing, but a stable demand for data analyst and data engineer roles as a freelancer. I feel like the title of a data scientist kind of is dying out. I don't know if the title is dying or it has a rebrand to ML ops or other or AI specialist now, if it just is adapted, because I know they are also popping up, but now they become much more fragmented. But the data analyst or the data engineer, I think, are terms that most clients are now became familiar with, and if they know that they need to pull data somewhere in, they need a data engineer. If they need to want to make insights or a dashboard, they know that they need an analyst. So I think there's much more education on um, those titles, and I think going those routes is usually a, a good route if you have AI or ML skills. They're still super valuable because you can be the data analyst and then within your work you incorporate those skills, or as a data engineer you incorporate them. But again, at the end, it's really you want to sell an outcome to the client, and you want to help transform so the client doesn't care if you know certain technologies. In that sense, they really just have a problem and they want you to fix it. And if you have the skills, therefore, If you're more a data engineer person or more a data scientist or data analyst, whatever you are, go on Upwork, try to read through just read through them, through the job projects that are listed there, read what clients, like what technologies are they listing, how are they framing the problems they have. If you spend 1 hour just reading, I rarely meet someone that has done that, and I think it's just 1 hour, why not? Do that, because after 1 hour you already have such a good feeling of what are people are saying, because there's similar projects always coming up. And that's the I think the market research that most people actually need and want, and that's what part of the course that I do with the data freelancer. I teach people that to do research for that.
I feel like that's like the one of the best ways. Just going on Upwork, seeing what people are saying, because that'll
Yeah.
give you a better sense. And I think one of the key things you were just saying is instead of focusing on the skills, focusing on the problems that clients have and figure out what you need to learn in order to solve those problems. I think that's just a more effective way to
One
approach
more
it.
idea just for the crowd.
Yeah.
For the research, also a really good tip that I like is do the reverse engineer. Go on Upwork. You can also search for freelancers. Search for freelancers that look like you know, have the same, let's say, job title, skills, and so on. Identify them. There's a filter for people who earned more than, I don't know, X amount. Um, so you kind of get the successful Upwork freelancers, and then go to their profile. And if you scroll down, you see what types of projects they worked on. And if you click on the projects, you can also see the job description again, what they applied on or what they were invited on. So you can really see successful freelancers with a job title and the skills that look like me, they work on X type of projects, and then usually there's so much more information, and I think it's like the backwards engineering style.
Yeah, that's a great pro tip right there. I hadn't thought of that one before. That's a good one. Who are you pairing with on the client side? Usually, technical ICs, data engineers, non-technical people. I guess like who's your point of contact?
Well, again, for me, as I mentioned before, now with the e-commerce business, it's definitely usually the founder who, in most cases, by nature, they are not technical people, and they need the data nerd, basically. So for them, I'm the technical person that they kind of trust on that sense. But if you work with on contracting side, as I mentioned before, and you usually work with large clients, large corporations, um, that need some AI specialist, machine learning, or even data engineer, or whatever it is, you usually are part of their data team or someone that, or their tech team. So then, of course, your first contact that basically does the interviews with you is probably someone from the tech side. So then, really depends who your target audience is. And over the last 7 years, I switched a little bit. I experimented, so it was always a little bit different, but
Yeah, so it's
both
evolved
been
over
good.
time, and it
Yeah,
depends on the type of customer you're going after, the type of skill services you're providing. But right
exactly.
now, for you, it's the founders because you're
Yeah.
targeting small businesses. How can anyone stand out from others, especially when you're just starting out on a platform like Upwork?
How do we stand out on Upwork? When we apply, we can either be amongst the first people to apply, so there's less, let's say, noise when you look at the application. That's one way of standing out, in my opinion. When you see a few, that's why also very important. If you, before you actually apply on Upwork, create your own project as a client, and let other people apply to your project and see how it looks like if you were a client side. I think that's a super important learning. Um, at the end, if you cancel the project again, all the if those freelancers that apply with their expensive connects nowadays on Upwork, they get them back because the project was canceled. So it's all fair, basically. You learn how other people basically apply, so you learn a little bit about some of the strategies, and you will learn that probably 90% suck in the application process. So that will give you lots of learnings. But I usually think, yeah, being one of the first is a good way of standing out. When you see, of course, credentials or like testimonials help, but if you start out, you don't have testimonials. So that's why you don't want to compete on a project where the client looks for testimonials and that backup. If there's two projects, on Upwork. The one project is there's the startup or there's this company that needs a data person be part of their business for a short time, and you think, oh, that sounds like a really nice project because it's an established company, they have money. Um, I want to apply for that. If you're new, you probably have very little chances to get that project because again, they're looking for someone that has kind of backed up that they have worked with different companies. Even though this project sounds nicer to you, you probably don't have the good chances of getting that if you have, let's say, a zero experience profile. Then there are people like what I've done is the first project where someone helping with an Excel spreadsheet. My strategy was get the first 10 projects as fast as possible. For I don't even care if I sell myself for $1 or something. The goal is to get 5 to 10 5-star reviews from clients. This way, I kind of get the rising star or rising talent badge on Upwork. I get 5-star reviews, and also I think there's this magical algorithm in Upwork. I feel like the more active, the more I apply on jobs, the more visible and the more people reach out to me, the more often I do small projects. Also, I feel like Upwork kind of rewards me to that. So even nowadays, sometimes when I see something super stupid and I think I can do that in half an hour, I don't care if someone pays me $10, as long as I keep my Upwork profile active and kind of keep it warm with those little projects. So yeah.
Yeah, there were two like gems in there. One was post a job as a client so you can see what it feels like to be on the other side, and then maybe you can kind of steal some of the tricks that the ones that stand out do that apply to your job. But then the second one was to just try to get five-star reviews quickly. Like it doesn't matter if you're getting paid $5 to do it. Like in the beginning, you can go from no review profile to five-star reviews very quickly if you take that approach.
Two things. People are, first of all, I feel like lots of people who want to start an Upwork, they they don't they don't think long term, and they just think I have to go on there and I have to get jobs right now, and they look for the jobs that they are the most attractive jobs, of course, and and then they fail and then they just leave again. So for everyone, there's a project out there. It's almost like a partner in the world. Um, but that's why I pick the one and be wise. And usually for starters, pick small projects. Usually that's my general recommendation. Pick small projects and be one of the first. There's enough stats on Upwork to see that if you apply like when was the project being published, usually if you apply within the first 5 to 10 minutes, that's usually a good time. Don't apply for anything longer than 1 or 2 hours, because then probably there are more people that have applied to it. So really be strategic and pick the first project. And yeah, and the second thing I think I already forgot, but at the end, at
No,
the end,
it's all there.
it's no. I mean, it still comes down to, do you want to make this work? Don't jump on the hot projects, but really
Right.
think strategically, and also think from the client side.
Mm.
Do I need? Am I urgent? Is there some urgency there? Do I care if the freelancer is new? No, because I'm just spending $5. There's little
Right.
risk for me. There's someone who claims they can do it. Hey, let me give them the project, because I
Right.
need the answer right now. And if you can get few projects, then your whole profile elevates.
So this one's from our Discord. How important is it to have industry experience before starting freelancing? Imagine maybe they just come out of like undergrad, or maybe they came out of a boot camp, like a
Yeah,
master's program or something like that.
it depends on the project. I mentioned before that niche doesn't always need to be tied to an industry. It could be a technology. You could be the, I don't know, Python Spark expert, or you could be someone to help companies scale with one specific technology. And if you use that technology in your undergrads or in your boot camp, and you know that you are really good in that, or even like your Excel spreadsheets, there are people that earn a lot of money just with Excel spreadsheets on Upwork, then why not? You can just become that person for that because that's your niche, that's your skill. So again, industry is helpful in certain ways. It depends always on your target.
So niching can help you even if you don't have that industry experience. If you're going like really specific, like, hey, I just help you with this very specific thing that I've experience with, and you can flash it up on your profile or something like that, like on your portfolio. So we've got 5 minutes. And let's say 5 minutes and 3 questions. So maybe we can just like rapid
Perfect.
fire into these.
Sure.
So DR asked, are you using any GTM tools like Play or Instantly? I think the answer is no, but have you heard of these tools? Have you used them at all?
No, I haven't.
Wendell asked, how to fish with possible clients. Maybe going back to the outreach of, reaching out to founders and things like that, maybe something in that direction. Like, how do you start conversations with potential
Yeah,
clients?
again, I think my number one advice is always when you start out, especially, you cannot afford to waste time on the whole marketing side of thinking what type of product do I want to offer and so on and so forth. And therefore, go directly to where the client is. And usually that is like a place like Upwork, or that is your personal network where you have worked with clients. Contact them directly. Basically talk to people as quick as possible before you say, oh, let me build a website, let me, I don't know, start posting on LinkedIn or write a blog. Those are all long-term strategies, but at the beginning you want to get quick results, quick feedback, and that's where the people are.
I think that's a great place to end. The other question was actually a repeat of the previous one.
Okay.
So Dimitri, thank you so much for being so generous with your time and experience and sharing it with everyone here. Thank you for everyone who joined. Our next podcast will be in 2 weeks, where I'll be talking to Jason Liu on how to price your consulting services for the value that you bring instead of the time that you're putting into it. So if you're interested in freelance work and consulting, that's going to be a good one. And thanks again, Dimitri, and we'll see you guys
Thank
in the
you.
next one. Take care.